what happened was Deshaun Watson gets his fully guaranteed contract. The management council tells the teams to collude, encourages them to collude, and then they just don't. But when we look at the evidence as it relates to 3 quarterbacks, and this is the other thing that I really didn't expect until I saw the document. There are details in there about specific contractual negotiations that we never have seen before. It's a look behind the curtain that's unprecedented for Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and Russell Wilson. All of them who negotiated their contracts at or about the time Watson got his deal and then finished the negotiations later. Start with Kyler. The Cardinals were going to hold firm and not give Kyler Murray a fully guaranteed contract. And his agent tried, but ultimately they didn't get one. And that's fine. But the most compelling aspect of that, Dean Spanos, the owner of the Chargers, reaches out to Michael Bidwell, the owner of the Cardinals, and we'll post something at PFT with the full exchange. Text messages that came into evidence. Spanos congratulated Bidwell on getting the deal done. Spanos said this will help us with our quarterback. In other words, because you didn't give Kyler Murray a fully guaranteed contract, because your deal is more like the pre-Deshaun Watson deals than the Deshaun Watson contract, we're in a better position to fend off an effort by Justin Herbert's camp to get a fully guaranteed contract. See, that's what this was about. When Deshaun Watson does his deal, is this a sea change or is it an aberration? The NFL went to work to make it an aberration. And they had to hold the rope through those 3 negotiations: Murray, Wilson, and Jackson. And then by the time those 3 quarterbacks don't get fully guaranteed contract, okay, threat neutralized. Deshaun Watson deal is an aberration. It also helps that Deshaun Watson hasn't provided much of a return on the investment. That's helped. That's definitely helped. Because if Lamar Jackson had gotten a fully guaranteed contract, he's the MVP the first year of the deal. Could have been, should have been. I voted for him to be the MVP the second year of the deal. He had an incredible year last year. He's been a guy that has earned what would have been, but wasn't a fully guaranteed contract. I'll move to Wilson next because he was the next one chronologically. The 61-page document, I think, is fascinating as it relates to Wilson's mindset, the negotiations. Wilson testified, as reflected in the document, that when he was traded by the Seahawks to the Broncos, he thought he was going to get a 7-year, $50 million per year, fully guaranteed contract. He thought that's what he was getting. Well, the problem is he didn't get it on the way in. He didn't get it when he waived his no trade clause. So then he gets traded to the Broncos. And, even though I've argued in the past that when you do a trade for the player, you got to get him to agree to your contract on the way in because then he has more leverage. In this case, it was almost better to get the guy who wanted out of Seattle and wanted to come to Denver and let's just do the contract later. It actually played to Denver's advantage to wait. And then they had an ownership change and new ownership. And Greg Penner asked the question we asked. He's got 2 years left on his deal. What are we doing? Why do we need to give him a new contract? I remember when he got the new contract, I thought, whoa. He wanted out of Seattle. Russ wants a cook. He wants to find a new kitchen. You don't have to give him a new contract. Wait a year. All of his new deals had been done with 1 year left on his contract. Give it a year. Let's see how it goes. And you know what? If they had, and frankly, nothing against George Payton, who's a really nice guy, and we've interviewed him before, but I'm astounded he still is employed because he's the one that gave that contract to Wilson. And Greg Penner, through the door, had his instincts right on the money, pun intended. We don't need to do this. But they did it. And what they did, they gave him a contract that wasn't fully guaranteed. And the document has evidence in it that is the crumbs. I'm talking now about the crumbs, okay? Remember that image. Hand at the bottom of the cookie jar, crumbs on the shirt, and with a mouthful of cookie, the kid says, I am not eating any cookies. Okay, the crumbs on the shirt are the Dean Spanos and Michael Bidwell texts. The crumbs on the shirt are Greg Penner telling people within the Broncos organization that other owners will be happy with it. Well, why do you care? You're in competition. Why do you care what other owners think? Well, I was talking to somebody about this earlier. Penner was the new kid on the block. Why does he care? He owns a business that's in competition with 31 other businesses. Why do you care if your competitors are happy with you? Do you think as CEO of Walmart, he gave a half a shit what Home Depot or Lowe's thought? No. Because those businesses aren't bound together under a collusive entity, inherently collusive entity. See, this stuff has been happening in plain sight for decades. And they finally caught them red-handed. It's amazing. And am I being a little? No, I'm not being a little hyperbolic. I'm convinced that this ruling, which someone told me yesterday, is the most significant ruling in sports since 1994. That's when there was a collusion case in baseball that helped end the strike favorably for the players. It's the most significant ruling since that. I just think that, and look around. I guarantee you, and I don't have to name the names, you know who they are. There's going to be reporters who will never, ever, ever breathe a word of this. People who are supposedly committed to being truthful with you, the audience. They will never say a word about this ruling and what its implications are. They won't even try. They won't even waste their time to try to understand it, explain it, spin the ball forward. I'm going to be doing it. I mean, it's funny. This is hitting at the perfect time because it's slow right now. It's kind of like the Sunday Ticket verdict that hit late June of last year. I got plenty of time to sink my teeth all the way in to this one, and I plan to. Last one. Oh, by the way, before I move on, with Russell Wilson, it's now obvious why it was such a big deal when they went to him during the 2023 season and said, if you don't move your guarantees, if you don't take away the date in early March of 2024 where your salary for 2025 becomes fully guaranteed, you're going to be benched. He thought his contract was more guaranteed than it was. And there's a comment in the document that he believed he essentially had a fully guaranteed contract. They pulled the rug out from under him when they went to him in 23 and made it clear that they're going to cut him after 23 because if they keep him, they owe him a fully guaranteed compensation package for 2025. They were willing to pay 24, and they did, minus the $1.21 million the Steelers paid him. They didn't want to be on the hook for 25. He thought he'd gotten more guarantees than he'd gotten. And I think his agent, Mark Rogers, who is primarily a baseball agent and is used to having fully guaranteed contracts, he was pissed when he thought the Broncos pulled a fast one by escaping a contractual commitment that he and Wilson both believed was a full guarantee. So remember, it was a big deal. It was a PR thing, and the union got involved. That was late in the 23 season. Oh, how dare the Broncos come to Russell Wilson and ask him to waive the date in March where his injury guarantee for 2025 becomes a full guarantee. That was all because at the end of the day, the Broncos convinced Russell Wilson to sign a contract that he thought had more financial protection than it did. He thought that that contract was going to pay him full guarantee for 23, 24, 25. Oh, and also 22, because that's when the deal was done. 4 years of full guarantees is what he thought he had. Now, Lamar Jackson, he was trying to get a fully guaranteed contract throughout. And in 2022, when he was entering the fifth year of his rookie deal, he kept telling Eric DeCosta, the GM of the Ravens, I want a fully guaranteed contract. He ended up choosing to play under his fifth-year option. And then in 2023, he was back at it. I want a fully guaranteed contract. DeCosta offered 2 different 3-year contracts that the Ravens considered to be guaranteed, which means it's practically guaranteed. We're not going to cut him. And it probably was year 1 and 2 were fully guaranteed, and year 3 would have become fully guaranteed after the first year. So you're not going to cut him after 1 year because you owe him the second year. So he's going to get all 3 years. That's a way around the funding rule where you don't have to put a giant amount or as big an amount in escrow. That's probably what it was. I don't know that, but it was probably something like that. It wasn't good enough for Lamar. He didn't want 3 years fully guaranteed. He wanted 5, like Deshaun Watson. And hell, who couldn't make a compelling argument that if Deshaun Watson gets a fully guaranteed contract, Lamar Jackson should? That was an easy argument to make, and that's why they needed the Deshaun Watson contract to be regarded as an aberration. If it's the norm, of course Lamar Jackson deserves a 5-year fully guaranteed contract. So he has to be traded. In lieu of taking either of the 3-year fully guaranteed deals, he has to be traded. And this all comes from the document. Eric DeCosta, the GM of the Ravens, said, give me a list of teams you want to be traded for. He never provided it. Along the way, Jackson cited to DeCosta that there were issues with his phone. The microphone on his phone wasn't working, so they were having communication problems. And I don't know whether that was just a way to avoid DeCosta. I don't know. Maybe it was broken. But it's just one of those weird details we never, ever would have known about. 2 years had passed. There was no mention of it. We were never going to know anything about it. Lamar was very secretive about the talks. The Ravens were very secretive about the talks because Lamar wanted it that way. Lamar's probably pissed that this is all getting out there. My guess is he's pissed. So then, and DeCosta said, as the time the draft is approaching in 2023, he's assuming he's moving on without Lamar Jackson. They're probably looking at quarterbacks in the 2023 class. What can we do? If we're not going to have Lamar, we need to do something. But they made one last offer to Lamar, and to DeCosta's surprise, that's directly from the document, to his surprise, Lamar accepted. That all becomes potentially fascinating moving forward because what are the Ravens and Lamar currently trying to do? Trying to do a new deal. Is he going to want a fully guaranteed deal now? Is he going to read this document? Is someone who's advising him unofficially going to read this document and say, you know what? You should push for a fully guaranteed deal. And if they don't give you one, we'll file another collusion claim. More on that coming up. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.